Hello and welcome to another episode of Pokémath. My name is Stefan Eriksson, and here in episode number 49, we're going to be looking at some Peonia math, or whatever you decide to call this supporter card you see over here. Our best alternative to Gladion, well, since then at least. And indeed, I'm going to keep it rather simple today. And that's very nice, Slowpoke, because this is not going to be very complicated, but as I'm going to explain here, I still feel there's a need to explain this based on comments you see around the internet. And it actually scares me a little that, well, this is not just known. So I hope that the explanation I show you here today will help you understand, well, some math underlying, well, your probabilities and chances for hitting what you actually want using this nice little supporter card. And before we get into the actual math, there's a few preliminaries we should discuss. Well, how does the card actually work, first of all? In this game, as we know, we have 6 prize cards. We don't know them from the start of the game, and depending how much you practice, you may know them once you have made one deck search. You can, in your mind, say, okay, these are the 6 cards I'm missing. But even so, you still don't know where they are. And we had many cards over the years which could go in and take a look at these prize cards and help us figure out, well, what is what and to grab certain cards. The newest one that we're using currently today is this supporter card, which reads in the following way. You can simply, in this case, choose or pick up to 3 prize cards from your prizes there to your hand. Then for each of the prize cards you did put into your hand, you can take a card from your hand and put face down as a prize card. So you can in this case not view all of them, but you can view half of them. And this is a perfect transition and perfect question for, well, the first thing we're going to be looking at. And that's simply just using Peonia to hit one specific card. You play your one awesome tech card, you know it's in the prizes, you pick up 3 of them, and well, what's the chance of that? Straightforward 50%. It doesn't get any easier than that. And why did I have it in there when it's so simple? I think it's a good idea to establish such a benchmark. Because, well, without further ado, let's just get to a more interesting scenario, shall we? And this is actually the main reason for why I made this video. A few months ago, there was a nice little post on Verbank. It was a nice, interesting post, and the post itself was perfectly fine, but some of the replies there got me thinking, oh god, there's not a lot of people who actually are pretty, they don't know what's actually happening here. So I thought it'd be a good idea just to explain it here. So in this particular case, you are first playing the supporter Peonia to pick up 3, after which you then get to take a knockout on, say, a Pokemon V, and allowing you to draw 2 prizes. And the question here, if you have one particular prize card you're interested in, what's the chance of success here? So in essence, you get to see sort of 5 out of 6, but before we get to any conclusions, let's just try and work it out. Because in this particular case, you have 2 events. You basically have what I would like to call event A, that is first you play the Peonia card. So you get to see half of your prizes, which that is just established earlier, 50-50, right? You then have an event B, that is that you draw your 2 prize cards. And of course, I'm making a few assumptions here. First, that you are indeed picking up 3 prize cards. Like you are maximizing your value of Peonia, so that means you have a hand that you can actually pick. Or rather, you just pick up all 3. That's a lot easier. And second, of course, you are picking 2 different prize cards if you don't succeed in the first one, right? So there's a few simple assumptions. I'm going to show 2 ways here. So first, in version 1, we see, okay, the first one, the probability of hitting with Peonia is 50%. We established that. Second up, if you're taking 2 out of the 3 last prize cards that you didn't hit in the first time, it's 2 out of 3 or 0.66. 66%, 2/3, whatever you want to call it, right? What you can then do, you can add these 2 probability masses together and subtract their overlap of both happening. So yeah, editing much, but okay. You subtract the probability of them both happening. So we say in this case here, you take probability A, you add probability B, you subtract their intersection, you would call it, and then you get the following little equation that I have here. And it all adds up to 83%, rounded of course with some decimals, but in this case it's 0.83, so your success rate becomes 83%. That sounds very much like 5 out of 6. But let's look at version 2 first. This was the version I initially wrote as a reply also on the post, so this is just to show you could also do it this way. You can also think it as calculating the, well, complement. That is, you calculate 1 minus the probability of failing in this case. So what are we going to do? We're going to think it as, first you miss it in the first one. That's again 50%. because it's 50-50. Second, the probability that you miss it afterwards is only 1/3. You pick 2 out of 3 that's left. So that means there's only one the other way around. So you pick 1 out of 3 for then you miss. So in this case, it becomes 0.33. Because you can assume that the two events that happens here are independent of one another, you can simply just multiply the two and you get 0.17 rounded. And then you just calculate the complement, which is 1 minus 0.17, yielding 0.83, just like version 1 here before. And that's it. 2 ways of showing the same thing here. And yeah, I do believe, and well, as Slowpoke says correctly here, there may be more ways of doing this, but now I just showed you 2 of them, right? So this is just a way or 2 ways that you can calculate this. And I hope this would settle this discussion. I also think this was the outcome of discussion, but it was a little, wouldn't say disturbing, but a little strange to see that so many people got this wrong. But this is not the entire video. I did come up with a third scenario I would like to look at, because I've been in this scenario a few times when I played Peonia myself. And that is that you hit 2 cards you need out there out of the 6 prize cards. So this I think is a little more interesting, because it's not so straightforward, but it's not difficult to calculate. So again, what's the probability that you hit 2 specific cards you need out of your 6 prize cards when playing Peonia, picking up 3? The first version, we simply just segment all possible, outcomes here. All possible ways this can turn out. That means that you can think of it now as you draw 3 cards in one at a time. So we draw 1 card, 2 cards, and 2 cards and 3 cards. If we think it like this, we can either, in this case, add up all the possible scenarios, but first you can say we hit the 2 cards we need in the first 2 draws. So what's the chance that I hit one of the cards that I need in my very first draw? Since there's 2 out of 6, that's the same as 1 out of 3. So there's 1 out of 3 I hit in the first one. So now suppose that I hit it in the first one and I draw from the second one. That means there's only 1 card left out there that I need out of 5 prizes. That means it's 1 out of 5. The 2 draws are independent of one another, so I can multiply the 2 probabilities. That's the first scenario. Now, what now if I hit it in the first and the third draw? What happens? The first scenario becomes exactly the same, 1/3. But now I miss it on the second draw. Well, what's the probability of missing? That's 1 minus hitting. So that would be, when I had 1/5 before, that becomes 4/5 for missing this time. And that leaves me with the third draw. There's 4 prize cards left at this moment, and 1 card in there that I need. So it's 1/4. And I multiply all the probabilities again, because they're independent draws. Finally, what if I hit it now in the second and the third draw? Second, third, yes, totally. And now what we have, we miss it in the first, right? So that means that there's 2 out of 3 that I miss it, because there's 1 out of 3 that I hit it in the first draw. So now I got, for my second draw, I got 5 prizes remaining with 2 that I want. So that's 2/5. I picked the right one, and now I'm left with 1/4 again. I can again just multiply all these probabilities, and because they're independent of one another. And as I said earlier, we just have to sum them all up, we add them all up, and we get a flat 20%. Straightforward 20%. So now you know that if you just want to hit 2 specific cards with Peonia, you have a 20% success rate. That's not bad. But this is not the only version, because I did say version 1. That means there's a second version. And that's because you can also use the hypergeometric distribution. One I've used a lot on this channel here before, and of course I want to use it again. And I used a nice online application you can also use called Deculator. It's a very good application. So I simply just plugged in the following here. In this case here, it says deck, but we have to imagine that's the prize cards. We have 4 cards that we don't want. We have 2 cards that we want. We want to have the 2 cards that we want in our hand, and we draw 3. That's all the inputs that we have over here. And of course, if you want to represent the formula, you get the following. You can revert back to episode 1 actually, and episode 3 in this case, to see more math and how you actually read and interpret this here. But the point being, it goes out to, or all ends out in, flat 20% once again. And this here will sum up what I've been doing here today. So what did we learn? We learned first of all the probability of getting what you need using Peonia. That's the overarching theme here. First we look at just hitting 1 card, flat 50%, right? Then we hitting the 1 card using Peonia, then drawing 2 after, 0.83, so 83%. That's the final answer, at least for me. Correct me if I'm wrong. always ready to listen to if I'm wrong. And well, that's what we have the comment section below for. And finally, we looked at hitting 2 cards using just Peonia. That was the nice little addition here, and that was a flat 20%. And with that said, well, that's all I had for you guys today, and I hope you enjoyed this class, and I hope to see you back for another class here in Stefan's classroom. Have a great day.